In this episode, we're following the journey of one first home buyer who, from the very outset, decided she wanted to use a buyer's agent. And don't for 1 minute think that's because she had a huge income or a gift from her parents. Instead, she's overcome a whole bunch of obstacles in the process. How did she do it?
Welcome to Your First Home Buyer Guide, the podcast for first home buyers who want to get it right.
I'm Megan and that was Veronica. We're both buyer's agents and probably old enough to be your mums. But that's a good thing because between us, we've got over 40 years experience and we are going to share with you bucket loads of stories about avoidable mistakes. Together, we're going to make sure that you get unbiased and real information that you can rely on so you can get where you want to be without missing a step.
Now, we've got loads of great tips for you in this episode, and if you'd like more useful tools, head over to the website homebuyeracademy.com.au. There you'll find free checklists that you can download, a free mini course on how to price a property, and our Where to Buy workshop for only $39. Priceless stuff, really.
Bargain. But before we get into the interesting stuff in this week's episode, here's the boring bit, the disclaimer. You, of course, know that nothing in this podcast is to be taken as personal advice. We always recommend getting the advice of an expert in their field of expertise. Now, we've done our very best to ensure that the content is correct at the time of recording, but things change. So check with the relevant government authority or your advisors to get the most up-to-date information.
Today, we're going to hear Sarah's story, and this one is a little different. No, she is not a Home Buyer Academy graduate. Instead, she decided very early on in her process that she was going to outsource. I found out about Sarah from talking to her buyer's agent, who was so impressed with her whole approach. And when I heard her story too, I was impressed and wanted to share it with you. Sarah is the first person in her entire family to ever buy a property, and she's not even 30. Okay, but before we get to that, we've got to ask Megan, what the hell is your house this week on the video behind you? Because I cannot understand why you're showing us this one. It looks like a
You'd think it was like a carbuncle or something like that, but no, this is Poland. And here behind me is the narrowest house I can find on the internet. It is 153 centimetres wide. There is a photo online. Check it out. It's called the Kret House, K-E-R-E-T, Kret House in Poland. And it is as wide as a bed, but not quite a full-size bed wide.
Oh, imagine trying to tuck the sheets in. Like you'd never be able to get the sheets in, would you? No, like this.
You'd constantly be struggling. If you've ever made a bunk bed for a kid and it's up against a wall, it's like this kind of
ruins your knuckles.
Bizarre dance that you do on. Anyway, we digress. Let's get on. I can't wait to hear how Sarah did this. Thanks for coming along, Sarah.
Thank you.
All right.
Let's start at the beginning. Can you give us a little bit about your background so that we've got a bit of context about, where you've come from, where you've got to, and why this was such a big step for you?
Yeah, sure. So I come from a single parent household. So I've been raised by my mum and I have a little sister who's 10 years younger than me, and not having anyone in my family who owns a house, it has been kind of what do I do? I don't know where to start. I have no idea. I have no one to speak to. Some of my friends own their houses, but no one in my family that I could really lean on. And that's pretty much how I started Googling and researching and every single question under the sun. And it happened to be during the first COVID lockdown that we don't like to speak of, that I had some sudden time to actually do my research. So, that's when I started and found out what a buyer's agent was and thought that, oh my goodness, I need an expert. That sounds like an expert. That's what I'm going to do.
Wow.
Fabulous.
I've got millions of questions going through my head. The first one is, currently in the market, there's a lot of talk about affordability or unaffordability of housing and how first home buyers are locked out of the market, that you need two incomes to be able to, and to put it in context, you bought in the Central Coast as well. So it's not in Sydney, Melbourne or Brisbane, but it's certainly still an expensive area.
Still an expensive area, yeah.
so people are often saying we're locked out of the market, the youth are locked out of the market. Unless you have a parents with a home already and the ability to help, you're never going to get there. And yet you've just gone and blown every single one of those arguments out of the window. And so I'm curious to understand, where did the idea come from originally to say, I want to buy a home? And how did you overcome the obstacle, not just of just generally how difficult it is to buy property, but also that you don't have any precedent in your immediate family?
Yeah, so the main driving factor was the fact that my mum has always rented. So I've grown up having to move houses quite a lot. And there was one period there, I think for 3 or 4 years, every year our 12-month lease, it would sell and we would have to move. And it was devastating. And the other driving factor is I love cats. So I have a pet cat, and it was very hard to get a rental with pets allowed.
Wow.
And I just went, I can't do this. I really want to have my own place where I'm never going to get kicked out of, where I don't have to worry about that. I can have my cat. I don't have to worry or stress about anything. So that was my motivation definitely behind wanting to purchase my own home. How it all came about and everything like that was that, sorry, can you hear that crackling?
Is that your cat?
It is my cat.
And that's a beautiful part of being live, right?
Sorry, let me just kick her out. I'll be one second.
That's all right. That's all right. That's hilarious. I've had, I haven't had a cat for a long time. And I do want one. I really want a cat, but I love the fact that they can walk across your keyboard. I think that's a bit of fun.
The amount of times I typed the wrong thing to someone and it was my cat.
Where are we up to? So you're just getting on to
how it all
came about. So what brought it about was obviously, you had to find a home for your cat that you weren't going to get kicked out of.
Yeah.
Yeah, literally. And, my mum would be a big influence for me as well. She's such a hard worker, and she's always kind of had that mindset of, if you work hard, you can do anything. And she's just been amazing. So I went, you know what, I can do this. I talked to my mum about it. Started to do always some Googling, there's some grants out there, there's some information out there. And I just went, you know what, I can do this. I'm going to put everything into it. And generally, I think with me, if I put my mind to it, I'm going to do it.
It sounds like it. There's a lot of internal fortitude there it sounds like it's been passed down from your mum as well.
Yeah.
So did she have, you said that there wasn't a lot of people within your family circle, your immediate circle that you could sort of turn to for advice, but what were some of the things that your mum said when you said, I think I'm going to go and buy a property for myself? What was her response?
She was very supportive. She was like, well, you know what you're like. I know what you're like. You work hard. You can do it. Let's do it. You can do it. And she was just so impressed that I had come to that decision. She was very excited for me. So, yeah.
Oh, and probably very proud now, I'd imagine too.
Oh, she's so proud. Yeah, when I did call her, spoiler alert, I just bought a house. So when I did give her the phone call and said, I got it, basically, both bawling our eyes out.
Oh, I love that. Tell me, so that's the exciting bit. We're going to get to the exciting bit and how you got there. But one of the hardest things that most people really struggle with is how to save up the deposit. So what were some of the things that you did to enable you to get enough together to actually go to the bank and say, well, here's my deposit, how much can I borrow?
Yeah, so it was the strictest budget ever. So I did a full Excel spreadsheet budget. I think I went to one of the government smart money websites and downloaded their budget tools.
That's a great budget tool there, isn't it?
Oh, so
really,
good.
really good. Yeah.
And I had no idea that was out there. That was something, again, that I came across when I was doing my research with Google. And I went, yep, okay, I'm going to budget. I can do this. And it was pretty much, now that I know what I'm spending my money on, what can I stop spending my money on that I don't need, that can go as extra money towards my savings. Yeah.
And what were some of those things?
What were some of the little things?
Oh, gosh. Yeah, nails, hair.
Right. So you're like Rapunzel.
So did you not have a haircut for 2 years?
Pretty much. And well, look, it was all during COVID when I was all deciding all of this, when I really started to knuckle down. So I couldn't go to the hairdressers. So some of the decisions were made for me.
There was so much forced saving during COVID, wasn't there? Because unless you did Uber Eats, you couldn't really go out. So, movies, events, sporting fixtures, all that sort of thing kind of went out the window. There was no opera, there was no, any of those sort of cultural things that you normally go to. We really just streamed it all during that time. It was a great forced saving period for some people.
And I think I've kept that kind of mentality with things, which I think has been the main thing right at the end there, keeping that mentality and being like, you know what, we don't need to go out for an expensive dinner or something. Let's go have a picnic and go for a walk and bring our own cheeses and wine.
Oh, fabulous.
So I did that a couple of times.
Very nice. So how long did it take you to save the deposit?
So I think it was about 3 or 4 years. So I had been saving for a holiday before COVID, and we were going to fly to Alaska and to do a cruise, and it was a very big holiday. So I had actually been saving for that first. And then when COVID hit, that little nest egg that I had flipped over. So I think I had about $10,000 at the time and couldn't spend it. So that went as my starting blocks for my house deposit.
Okay. It's not an unusual thing to hear at the moment that people who were going to allocate funds to holidays actually redirected it to either buying a home or renovating in some cases if they already had a home. So the poor old travel industry got a bit of a shock, but the renovation and building industry and it's been great for people to be able to get that discipline around saving. So congratulations. So 3 or 4 years, that's actually pretty good, speedy progress.
Yeah, I was very strict on myself.
So when you started Googling, right? So you've got the budgeting tool and what are some of the other things? And obviously you learned about the existence of buyer's agents and the idea about using one. I guess what else did you learn about in that research phase? And then at what point did you reach out to a buyer's agent? And how did you work out who to reach out to?
Yeah, so the main things that kept popping up in podcasts and articles and everything was about a team and building your team. And that really resonated with me, being on my own, doing this on my own. I didn't have a team. So I was like, okay, that's what I need to find. And that's when the buyer's agents came up and things like that. They talked about getting a mortgage broker. Don't just go to your bank, all these sorts of things. They're all your team. Conveyancer. It just never ends. So that was the main thing that I had first found out about, and that's what led me to the buyer's agent. Then when I was researching for that, I was looking for a local, and I did want to really support another woman, someone working in the field. That's something that I valued a lot, and that's when I was very lucky that I had found that in Google, because it was a bit of a niche market there. And that's pretty much where my research had kind of gotten me to. And when I picked up the phone, that's when Michelle and Linda, they gave me everything I needed to know. And I went, okay, right, including they gave me a mortgage broker, her contact details, and put me in touch with her as well. And it just went from there. So they really started everything, because all I had was saving. That's all I was doing. And that's
Step
all I
one. Yep.
Yeah.
I'll just give a quick shout out to Michelle and Linda from Spring Buyers Agency in the Central Coast. And the reason I was talking to Michelle was because they've been referred to me by a few people, in fact, as local specialists up there. And I'm sort of building a bit of a network across the country at the moment as a bit of a side project. And so I was chatting to her, and that's where where you came up in the conversation. And, what I also thought was so impressive is she said, Sarah reached out to me a year before she was ready to buy. And I thought, not only was it great on your part to do that, to say, look, I'm not ready, but look, I'm wanting to get myself organised rather than leave everything to the last minute, which a lot of people do. But also that as a buyer's agent, she was prepared to help you that far in advance. And there are a lot of churn and burners in the property industry, you know, in all sorts of aspects of it. But, you know, and this is one thing we talk about getting your team too. It's step one in the PACE system is, you know, assemble your support crew. And, you know, we talk about particularly with the mortgage broker as well, someone who will talk to you and help you early on so that you, as you save, you've got the right targets in mind and the right expectations, and you don't make silly mistakes because you didn't know any better, you know. So I think that that's another thing that really stood out for me, was that you had really were laying down your foundations really well, but also you'd found people who were prepared to give you that support during that process. So tell us a story about what happened when then, I guess, what was next? You reached out to the broker. Was that the next step?
Yeah, I did. So the next step was to reach out to Melissa. So she was fantastic. And again, she actually gave me advice and was willing to talk and give me the time. And like you said, I did have quite a few people that didn't want to talk to me when I was doing my calling around originally. And I was getting some bad advice. You know, people wanted me to buy all these different things and go with them.
Tell us more about
that. Tell us more about that.
Yeah. Yes, I had quite a few wanting me to do off the plan.
You know, what were your thoughts on that?
2% deposit, was it? Or 1% deposit or something crazy, which I'd never heard of. And
how
then,
did you know
the building grants at the time.
Yeah, but how did you know that wasn't a good idea?
It was just a gut feeling, honestly. It really was. I just did not click with the people that I was talking to. I could feel like they were talking over me, or they were just sales. And it just didn't sit right. I did a bit of Googling to back up my feeling, but I think that's the thing as well. It's not just about getting anybody on your team. You really want to make sure that you connect and click, and you know that this person actually has your best interests. You want to find the right people for you, not just anybody. And that was what I noticed with Michelle and Linda. I was like, oh gosh, what a connection. They get me, you know, they were so helpful. I had the best feeling knowing that they would be guiding me through this process. And then it got even better when they put me in touch with my mortgage broker. So when I spoke to her, I got all the same feelings. I went, oh, she's got my best interest at heart. And, you know, they all believed in me, and it was awesome. So I think that's that's just a side note, not just anybody. You want to get the right people that, you know, work for you as well.
Yeah. What was some of the things that you talked about with Melissa, your mortgage broker, that surprised you? You know, what were some of those eye-opening moments when you were talking through the whole lending process?
Oh, everything. That sounds silly, but even to this day, you know, today I actually signed my mortgage documents.
Congratulations.
So, thank you. It's just, there is so much that you don't realize you don't know. And I went, oh my goodness. So yeah, she was talking me through the different grants, lender's mortgage insurance, stamp duty, how it all works. Like, I had no idea about any of that. The first home buyer 5% deposit scheme, I didn't know anything about that. So they were all things that she was able to clearly explain to me so that I could understand how much of a deposit I would need. And at this time when I reached out to her, I didn't have the deposit I needed. So she was giving me a good idea of what I needed my goal to be. And that's really what I needed at that point in time, was a goal, so that I could actually take the next step, because I had no idea what I was doing.
Did you use any of the grants?
I did. I got the 5% deposit. So very exciting. And again, pays to have a really good team, because it was in January, I think they released the extra 4,000 spots. I got one within 24 hours. So yeah, I didn't have one at the time, and it was just perfect timing. And she knew I was reaching my goal for my savings around that time. And she said, are you there yet? There's grants about to come out. I've just heard it's going to happen in the next 48 hours. That day, I think I put my last couple of $100 in to get me over the line. And we went, yep, ready to go. And she got me in, knew which bank would have enough grants, knew who to go with, got me in straight away, knew what the rates would be. And yeah, I got the 5%. So that was a huge, huge difference. Yeah. And the other one that stamp duty was waived because my purchase was under, I think, $650 it is. And obviously with the 5% as well, I don't pay lender's mortgage insurance. So all of the above were all pretty much waived, which was great.
Amazing. And you didn't have to buy brand new?
No, I didn't have to buy brand new. I got a beautiful established little villa, and it's just beautiful. You know, hardwood floors, plantation shutters, all these things I didn't think I could ever afford. Stunning. Yeah.
Wow.
So you ended up with a villa. Was that when you first had that vision of, I'm going to find my first home? What were you thinking in your head versus what you ended up with? Were they sort of similar, or did you find that there was movement and changes along the way?
Oh, it was a process. Completely different to what I had originally planned. So I did have to kind of reflect on what I was after, make a list of things that I really, really wanted, things that would be nice to have, you know, go through all my values and my priorities. And it is hard. It's such a process where I felt like I was getting misled by what I think I should get, what people might expect me to buy. You know, should I be buying a family home so I can resell it later to a young family? You know, but that's not me. I'm not there yet. I might not be there for 5-10 years. You know, it's just for me. So,
and the cats.
And the cats. That's right. So, and, you know, who I am as a person, I do love a little bit of luxury and, you know, those sorts of things. So for me, a few houses that we looked at were either houses or a duplex because of my budget. They had a nice size yard and all this sort of thing, but they would require a lot of work. And I was prepared to do some DIY and get in there. But when we looked at the villa that came up, it was just every tiny luxury that I love. And I went, this is me in a house. Oh, there was so much. Yeah, I couldn't believe it. There's a skylight in the bathroom. There's a niche in the shower. It's got aircon. It's got a bath. Like all these things that were like a positive to have, a little bonus, it had already in it. It's got a fire pit. It's got a little deck. Like it's just beautiful.
Wow.
So yeah, all these things that I actually didn't even think I could get, and you know, I had on my would be nice list. And those are some of the things that with Michelle and Linda, they understood who I was. They got to know me. They not only knew what I was after in a house, but they knew me as a person. So when this came up and it had all these cute little luxury extras, they knew it was very much me in a house, and they suggested it to me, even though it didn't tick all my boxes originally. But when I got in and saw it, I went, this is it.
So you sort of went through that journey of working out what were the compromises that were right for you, and for you, the compromise that was right was going from a house to a villa, which gave you all those other things that were on your nice to have list. Wow, what a big journey to go through.
Yeah, it was crazy, and I can't imagine doing it on my own. Still, I can't imagine doing it on my own.
I know a lot of my clients, and I'm sure, Megan, you have the same thing. You know, we help a lot of women, single women at all different ages. And a lot of the time they'll say that it's like having someone else there as a sounding board. You know, you don't have a partner, so you don't have to toss around. Mind you, it's sometimes harder with a partner because like you've got to negotiate with them. Whereas you don't
There's compromises on the property and compromises on what they want. Yes.
Exactly right. So, you know, having someone as a sounding board, I know even in the course in Home Buyer Academy, we get a lot of people doing that and using the forum to communicate with us, saying that, you know, once again, you know, there's a lot of women that are buying a property and it's, you know, support there for them not to go through it alone. So I guess, how would you say that by using a buyer's agent, how did that shape your property search? Did you find that you actually probably, like with the villa, for instance, do you think you would have looked at it if you'd been out there looking on your own? Do you think that you would have even noticed it, or because it didn't tick all these other boxes, it wouldn't even been under your radar?
Yeah, I honestly don't know if I would have looked at it, which is scary to think. I could have missed out on such a great property. Most of the properties we looked at were off market, which was also really cool. And, you know, being the only person to look was really exciting, and I felt very special. And yeah, I really don't think that I would have looked at that property because, it didn't tick some of those major boxes. You know, I wanted an office, but this one actually had a spare bedroom instead. So, you know, things like that if I had have been just doing my realestate.com search and it didn't tick the boxes, it wouldn't have come up. Yeah, so it was, it's quite eye-opening and, scary to reflect that I may not have even looked at that.
What about the location? Was that in an area that you were actively looking in, or did you find that you had to sort of spread your wings a little bit there too?
It was very interesting because it wasn't on my list of suburbs when I initially met with Michelle and Linda. So when we had our first conversation and I was telling them about what I was after, they suggested the suburb. And I was like, yep, I am open to that suburb. Don't know why I didn't consider it. So it was included in our search, but it wasn't actually on my radar to start with. So that was their suggestion.
Isn't that so important? You mentioned right at the start that one of the things that you were really looking for was local knowledge, that local expertise. Yeah. And I think that just reinforces you knew of the suburb and there was no reason why you wouldn't consider it, but you just hadn't. And it's almost that, that eye-opening local knowledge. Here's how it compares to the suburbs that you think that you like and that we've been looking in. And it's almost like light bulb moment where you go, yeah, actually, that does sound good, but you'd never put it into a realestate.com search.
No, that's right. And it was definitely a light bulb moment. I had many of them.
Give us some of the other ones.
What are some of the others?
Yeah, well, stairs. So didn't even consider that, but a lot of the places were upstairs, 2-story duplexes or villas and that sort of thing. And this one doesn't have stairs. And it was something where I was like, I would love to have an upstairs. I would love to go upstairs to the bedrooms and that sort of thing. And guests don't go upstairs and all these sorts of fantasies that I had. And then when I went and actually had a look and the amount of times I had to climb up and downstairs, I went, you know what, let's go for 1 story. So that was a fun one. Even light bulb moments about just the suburbs that we were looking in. Yeah. Sometimes I had a suburb that was high on my priority that we were looking at and, somewhere I wanted to be. But by the time I'd actually driven out there and the far streets that it was in all the way out, might as well not have been in that suburb. So it didn't really matter at the end for that suburb if it was in there or not because it was so far away. It was the biggest drive and traffic. I went, okay, that suburb is only this half.
Yeah, right. So you actually start to narrow down, localities within suburbs.
Yes, exactly. Yep.
And this is something actually that, people that buy where they're not living, if they don't realise how far things are, it depends because you can come at places from different directions too. And if you come from one direction, you don't realise how far it is from amenities or whatever. And if you don't have local knowledge. When you're sort of working with these buyers agents, I mean, the thing is that I know when we're going through properties with clients, and I'm sure it's the same with you, Megan, that quite often the client will go, oh my God, I never would even see the negatives. I wouldn't even notice that to avoid that or whatever. Yeah. And so I guess, and also there's a whole due diligence process, isn't there? And often buyers just don't do enough due diligence. Were there some of those sort of examples that you can give where you're going, and you'd learn about property itself or different properties and things to avoid?
Oh, yes. With all the recent rain, it was the best time to inspect houses. Yes. So I could see for flooding or leaks and things like that. Yeah. So I was very much so enjoying doing all my inspections on a rainy day. That was an eye-opener, knowing the backyard's pool and things like that. And things that you wouldn't have noticed in summer. Even the other day, I went for a drive to Sydney and the planes were all landing and I went, imagine some people might have bought houses during COVID where there was no planes and now you're hearing all the planes.
Yes, and busy streets. I think that is so true, because absolutely there was hardly anything in the sky and there wasn't much on the street. So if you bought something during that time, you might be in for a rude shock when air travel resumes.
We were constantly reminding people, even myself have forgotten, and I do live under the flight path. And I've lived under worse flight paths than here than better ones, right? So, when I first moved in, I was like, oh yeah, that's right. I've forgotten about those. They're pretty annoying. But there's lots of other benefits living where I live and I knew I was up for it. But recently it's like, oh my God. And we would be reminding clients who are looking under flight paths and saying, I don't know how to remind you how noisy it can be.
Yeah,
because when one day this will all be over and you will not like me if you buy this and I have not hammered this home,
I remember doing an inspection on a property in a suburb very, very early in buyer's agency. I'm talking 17 years ago, and it was a particular suburb that we don't buy in, but I went out with another buyer's agent and we literally looked up and you could high five the pilot. It was that close to the house. It was so low.
Does that happen in Brisbane too, does it?
We're about to get our flight paths redirected, so that's a bit exciting for a lot of people. More out over the bay.
Oh, okay. I was about to say it could be very, very disappointing for some people.
It has been disappointing for people, but there's going to be more directed over the bay, which could be anyway. We digress.
We do. But yes.
That's a whole nother podcast. Flight paths.
Yes, we should do one. We're going to do one on floods. We should do one on flight path. Now, but on that, Sarah, in terms of using a buyer's agent, because you expect, and I don't know, I haven't preempted this question, so I don't know what you're going to tell us, but I would expect that any buyer's agent should be doing due diligence when they buy a property for a client. Now, I know a lot don't. So there you go. There's a big warning sign for anyone going to use a buyer's agent. You need someone who is a local specialist. You need someone who is going to do all the things that they need to do to find out whether that's the right property for you, whether there's any deal breakers, someone who actually gives a shit about you, and someone who's experienced and got a good track record and is going to be around long enough so that if something does go wrong, they're still there to actually answer your questions. Tell me about that due diligence process once you'd found this property. What did they do to make sure that you could cover off to make sure that you weren't making a mistake?
They did so much, and at all hours of the night, I was getting emails and messages. So one of the first things was this was actually an on-the-market property. So that day when I looked at it, there were multiple people asking for contracts and there were offers coming in. And straight away...
So private treaty, not auction?
Yes, private. Okay. Yes. Straight away they were looking at comparable sales. So they did a full Excel spreadsheet of everything that's similar, what they sold for in that suburb. It was very relevant. So we could actually get a perspective of what we should pay, what we should offer. And it made me feel really comfortable with the process as well, because I didn't know what to offer. I'm like, I don't know. They were already getting offers higher than what the price had been set at, and it could have gone crazy. It was a beautiful property. So that was the first thing that they did, was put together this spreadsheet so that I had all the research in the suburb, and it actually ended up coming down to a best and final, which was stressful. But, we knew what we were comfortable to pay. We had it all there. We'd done all of our research. So I felt so confident, and we just said, look, this is our best and final. And if we don't get it, we are comfortable because we have not overpaid. And that was a big thing that they were really looking after me with as well, was they were like, we're not going to let you go crazy with this one. This is what we're comfortable for you to put in as well. This is what's comparable in the suburb. So that was one of the big things they did. And then, it has been crazy. Let me tell you, the last week in the cooling off period has been crazy. So building inspections, pest inspections, strata reports, it has just been nonstop getting it all done, getting a conveyancer for me. They did all of that. So put me in touch straight away. I had multiple Zoom meetings, going through contracts, going through strata, going through all the drama of all of that.
Yes.
And it was just so easy. Everything just came straight to me, all came in, into my inbox. There's this paperwork to read, there's this to sign, and then there's this to do, and it all was just there. So it was a lot. It was so much work, and I would have never have done any of that if not some of it.
So that's an interesting point, because how would you have fit all of that in while you were working? In hindsight, now that you've done it.
Even as it was, I was working, and then at night I'd come home and check my inbox. Yep, okay, there's 3 emails of all this stuff I have to do tonight. And it was a very tight deadline, so it did need to be done straight away. So I don't know how I would have been able to work. I would have had to take time off, and I didn't know. I would not have known that I would needed time off if I was doing this on my own. So it would have been a last minute call in. Sorry, guys, got heaps to do.
Yeah. And it never happens all on one day. You can't do like all of your home buying admin on one day. There's a progress of different tasks that you need to do, and some things are dependent on others and all those sorts of things. So you mentioned that it's all done and dusted now. It's unconditional. You've popped the champagne.
Yep. It has been amazing. So I'm so excited. I still can't believe it. And it would not have been possible at all without my team. You know, even at the very end there, I think yesterday I had one more little hiccup where because I have the 5% scheme, the vendor was still wanting a 10% deposit. So my conveyancer was in there fighting it. She got other clauses taken out of my contract yesterday. They wanted to use my deposit for their deposit.
Yes.
Oh, they wanted it released. Okay.
Yeah, so I didn't know anything about that. I wouldn't have known what that meant in a contract to look at that on my own. So she was there doing all this work in the background, and this all happened yesterday. So it's all very fresh in my mind. Of all these things I would not know about, all these, you know, things that could have gone wrong. So all that sort of stuff I would not have known. But yeah, all done now. It is so exciting. Pop the champagne, very excited, looking at some cool furniture.
Now you're decorating.
Amazing. Oh, you got any money left? Oh, boy.
I know. I was like, okay. But look, I've actually got a longer settlement, so I'm excited about that. I've got an extra 2 weeks. So 2 more weeks of saving for some cool furniture.
Fantastic. It's so cool because, like, you know, that whole process, even though you've exchanged contracts. So in New South Wales, you exchange contracts, and if you get a cooling off period, because it's not always on offer, then you get 5 working days to get all of this due diligence done, is what you're talking about there. So It's a bit of a mad rush, and your head would be spinning if you didn't know. You're relying on the sales agent to tell you what needs to be done, and at the end of the day, they don't necessarily want you doing too
rigorous. They don't want you to find things out.
No, because then you might pull out of the sale, you know, pull out of the purchase, and obviously there's a penalty for anyone to pull out during the cooling off period. However, there's still a risk. The vendor can't pull out, but the buyer can if they find something out. So the other important thing is that having a conveyancer that's working hard for you, because, you know, only recently, it was actually a client of ours was using a lawyer that we didn't recommend. They'd found themselves. And this lawyer kept raising all these issues, but then going, there you go, you sort it out. You need to do your research, and sort of going, oh, but this is a problem, and just passing it onto the client. So then, of course, it was coming back to us, and we're like, hang on a minute, this is something that only a lawyer can advise you on.
Yes.
So we're sort of like, this drama triangle happening. We're going back to the client and to the lawyer to go, these are the questions you need to answer. You know, it was ridiculous. And whereas other lawyers would actually explain things, go in and advocate for their client, you know what I mean? There's a real difference in the service level. So it sounds like you did have that great team. And was that conveyancer obviously was found by the buyer's agent as well? I guess that's one of the benefits of using a really good buyer's agent. They know they're a really good broker, they're a really good conveyancer. It sounds like that's exactly how it played out for you.
Yep, exactly. They had their team as well and put me in touch with everyone. And all of that drama was taken care of. You know, I heard about it after it was sorted. She didn't tell, you know, so I was like, wow.
You just need to make the decisions and pay the money. What, Sarah, I'm really interested, and we do ask all of the first-time buyers who we have on the podcast this question. But what's your one piece of advice for first home buyers who are still climbing the mountain? We call it climbing the mountain. It's sort of akin to getting yourself up to the summit and not falling off along the way. So what now that you've been through this, what's the one piece of advice you would give to other people still going through the process?
Yeah, well, look, anyone can do it. That is the thing. Anyone can do this. But my advice is you need to have the right team. Trust the experts. If you think about your own job and what you do and how good you are at your own job, imagine how good they are at their jobs and helping you. And that was really what it came down for me, is that I know that I've got skills in my job, so I can definitely understand and trust the experts in this. This is what you do day in and day out, and that's who I want to have helping me.
Oh, that's awesome. That's such good advice. I think that one of the things that Veronica and I ram home to people constantly is about, you know, the team, get the team up and at the start, because as you said, and I think this is awesome. You said right from the start, you had the team. So as you were preparing yourself and building your deposit, you were learning along the way and building your team. So you knew when things were happening and what was going to happen and what the impact was going to be.
Yep.
See, a lot of people, they only get that help when they've saved the money. And it's a real chicken in the egg because, like you said, you didn't even know how much you needed to save, so you need to get the team. And it's a bit like doing the Home Buyer Academy course for any of you out there that thinking, okay, well, I can't afford a buyer's agent, but you really want to know how to do it properly and thoroughly and get it right. You need to actually do that and learn all that stuff early before you've saved the money. Don't be one of these people that does the course and then 2 weeks later you buy the property because you've just basically, you're doing a mad cram because you found something, It's like use it to prepare and arm yourself with all the information you need. Like really, don't dive over, don't overanalyze yourself into inaction,
analysis paralysis is the opposite side, isn't it? Yeah.
We're so excited for you, Sarah.
Well done. Congratulations.
Yeah.
Thank you for sharing your story and your journey with us. It's been an absolute pleasure to talk to you. And feel free to share some photos with us. We'll pop them on the, well done
I will.
board.
Thank you.
In this episode, we've covered a very small part of our 10-step online course for first-time buyers. If you would like to learn more about the process and how to buy without making a mistake, then head over to our website, www.homebuyeracademy.com.au. Don't forget to subscribe to the podcast so you won't miss an episode. And if you like what you've heard today, please give us an iTunes review. 5 stars would be wonderful. It will help others find us as well.
Thank you for joining us. We hope you found this really useful. And if you have, please share the love with others who are in the same boat. We'll be back next week with some more priceless stuff.